Welcome to the sleep paralysis tapes. Settle into the dark, pull the covers close, and let the heavy silence fill your room. Tonight, we descend into chilling tales of the unexplained. Before the screen fades to pitch black, I invite you to become part of this archive. If you have your own terrifying encounters, please contact me and I will narrate your story in a future tape. If these shadows bring you comfort, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell. Now, close your eyes. Do not look at the foot of your bed. Just listen and let us begin. It started with a call. That's how these things always start. And I wish I could tell you it was a call on a stormy night, or during some blackout, or on Halloween. It wasn't. It was a Tuesday, a quiet Tuesday in November. You need to understand something about the night shift at a 911 center. It's not what you hear about. Most of it is a kind of controlled boredom. A fluorescent lit limbo. The air always smells like old coffee and ozone. The only sounds are the hum of servers, the click of the keyboard, and the low murmur of other dispatchers. That's where Kara was. Muncie, Indiana, 2015. Her name isn't really Kara, but we'll call her that. She was good at the job. Calm. Methodical. The kind of person who finds a strange comfort in procedure. The forms have boxes. You fill in the boxes. You ask the questions in order. You maintain control. The rhythm of a quiet overnight is its own kind of trance. You do your paperwork. You sip the bitter, burnt coffee. You watch the clock tick toward 3 a.m., the deepest, stillest part of the night. You start to believe you have a handle on the chaos of the world. You log the noise complaints and the disturbances. You think you've heard it all. That's the false sense of security. The quiet builds in you. The quiet is just the gap between calls. And this is where it gets bad. It was 2:17 a.m. The call hit her console with a soft electronic chirp. A landline. The address auto-populated. Riverbend Apartments, Building 3. Apartment 12C. She keyed her mic and gave the standard greeting. Muncie 911, what is your emergency? There was no reply at first, just the hollow sound of an open line. Then, a breath, a shaky, shallow inhale. Hello? Kara said, her voice steady and professional. Can you hear me? What's your emergency? A woman's voice answered. It was a whisper, strained and thick with fear. He's in my apartment. Procedure. Box 1. Okay, I need you to tell me your name. Lena. Just that. A whisper. Okay, Lena. Are you in a safe place right now? Can you tell me what's happening? The footsteps. They stopped outside my bedroom door. The whisper was so low, Kara had to strain to hear it. She could hear the woman's panicked breathing close to the receiver. My door is locked. The front door is dead bolted. I checked it. Lena, listen to me. Is there anyone else in the apartment with you? No. I live alone, but I heard him walking in the living room. And then he whispered my name. Kara kept her voice low and even. She was typing now, alerting police, her fingers moving automatically. Okay, units are on the way. They're coming to you right now. Can you tell me what he said? What did the voice sound like? Lena's next breath hitched, a sob caught in her throat. It was right outside the door. He said, Lena, and that's when Kara heard it. It wasn't over the phone line from Lena's end. It was underneath it. A second voice, bleeding through somehow. A man's voice, but wrong. Guttural. Distorted, like it was coming from a throat full of gravel. It whispered the same word, just a fraction of a second after Lena said it. Lena, it wasn't an echo. It was a response. Kara froze. Her finger hovered over the console. The procedural script in her mind shattered. That sound. It didn't belong in the clinical world of her dispatch booth. It was something ancient and cold. Over the line, Lena let out a tiny, choked whimper. Then the line went dead. Not the click of a phone being hung up. Not the sudden silence of a disconnected call. This was different. It was the sound of the open line itself collapsing, being swallowed. It lasted for one final static-filled second, and then it was just gone. Kara sat there in the humming quiet of the center. The coffee tasted like ash. The familiar hum of the servers now sounded like a held breath. She looked at the address still glowing on her screen. Apartment 12C. She had done everything right. She had followed procedure. She had filled in the boxes. But as she sat there, waiting for the officers to report in from that empty apartment, a cold, simple truth settled in her stomach. It was the first crack in her world of controlled boredom. Something had just whispered into her headset. And she had no box to put that in. The radio crackled to life less than 4 minutes later. Officer Miller's voice was calm and flat. Dispatch, we're on scene at Riverbend. Building 3. Exterior is secure, no visual on any subjects. Kara keyed her mic, her voice back in its procedural box. Copy. Caller reported the intruder inside her apartment, 12C. Front door is deadbolted from the inside. Copy. Then, silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of waiting. Kara could picture the two officers in the dim hallway of a quiet apartment building just after 2 in the morning. The smell of old carpet and cleaning spray. Their flashlights would be cutting through the dark, beams landing on the door of 12C. Miller's voice came back. It had lost a little of its flatness. Dispatch, you said the caller was inside? Affirmative. Female, stated she was in the bedroom, door locked. Advised intruder was in the living area. Another pause, longer this time. Then Ruiz's voice, younger and less guarded. The door's locked, but there's no light under it, no sound, nothing. Procedure. Can you confirm the deadbolt? They did. The metallic scrape of the bolt hitting the strike plate was audible over the radio. A solid, final sound. Then the creak of the door swinging open. And this is where the story should have resolved. A frightened woman found hiding in a closet. A misunderstanding. A bad dream. That's the box this was supposed to fit into. Officer Miller's next transmission stopped all of that. Dispatch, we're in the apartment. It's clear. Clear as in no subject, or clear as in empty? Kara asked, the words too fast. Empty, Miller said, and the word hung in the air of the dispatch center. I mean, empty. Living room has a folding chair. That's it. No TV, no rug, no pictures. Ruiz's voice further away called out. Hello? Police. Lena? No answer. Just the echo of his own voice. They cleared the apartment room by room. Their reports painted a picture that made less and less sense. The bedroom had a bare mattress on the floor. No sheets, no blankets. The closet was empty, not even a wire hanger. The kitchen was the worst. Ruiz checked the refrigerator. It was off, unplugged. And it was empty. Not a forgotten condiment. Not a single shelf. Just dark, clean plastic. A dead-bolted door. A terrified call. And an apartment that looked like it hadn't been lived in for months, maybe years. Kara sat there, her hand cold on the microphone. She heard the confusion in their voices turning into a professional, methodical unease. They checked the windows, all locked from the inside, the latches dusty. No fire escape. No signs of a struggle. No purse, no wallet, no cell phone. No toothbrush in the bathroom. It was a shell. The official report, number 154562, would call it unfounded. A single, neat word in a box. It means no crime occurred. It means there was nothing to investigate. But you need to understand what unfounded feels like when you're the one who heard the fear. It doesn't feel like a conclusion. It feels like a door slamming shut in a room with no windows. The officers left. The sun came up. The day shift arrived with their chatter and their fresh coffee. Kara finished her paperwork, her entries precise and clinical. She drove home in the gray morning light, but she couldn't reconcile it. The math didn't work. The sheer, liquid terror in Lena's whisper and the absolute sterile emptiness of that apartment. They couldn't both be true. One of them had to be a lie. And Kara knew, in a place deeper than procedure, that the apartment hadn't lied. The dust doesn't lie. The empty fridge doesn't lie. The silence they walked into was a real, physical thing. So that left the call, the voice, the whisper underneath the whisper. She lay in her own bed that day, staring at her ceiling, listening to the normal sounds of her own house. And for the first time, she wondered about the space inside a dead line. That silence after the call collapsed. Where did it go? What was in it? She had no box for that either. Just a cold, hollow feeling where her sense of control used to be. The world had a crack in it now, and through that crack, in the deepest part of the night, something had whispered. 5 years passed. The crack in Kara's world had never fully sealed. It was a hairline fracture in her foundation, something she'd learned to step around. She'd left the night shift and moved to days. She'd even moved apartments from a second-floor walk-up to a small, neat house with a little yard on Oakwood Lane. 1427 Oakwood Lane. She'd told herself it was for the quiet, for the normalcy. A place where the walls felt solid, but the procedures were still in her blood. The boxes were still there. So when her personal cell phone rang at 11:43 p.m. on a Sunday night in March of 2020, she didn't think twice. The number was blocked. That wasn't unusual for a former dispatcher. She answered, her voice calm and automatic. "Hello?" What came back wasn't a voice. It was the hollow digital hiss of a recording being played, and the first voice she heard was her own, younger, tighter with controlled urgency. "Muncie 911, what is your emergency?" Kara's breath stopped in her throat. She was standing in her own kitchen, the overhead light too bright, and she was listening to a ghost. Her own ghost. Then, the whisper. Lena's whisper, strained and terrified, exactly as she remembered it. "He's in my apartment," the playback continued. It was the entire call. The exact audio. Every question, every panicked answer preserved in perfect, awful clarity. She could hear the background hum of her old dispatch center in her own voice. She could hear the texture of the fear in Lena's. This was impossible. 911 calls are archived, yes, but they are sealed. They are evidence. They don't get played back to you in your kitchen on a Sunday night. Her hand went to the counter to steady herself. This was a violation of a different kind. Someone had reached into a locked vault of her life and pulled out the one thing she couldn't forget. The recording played on. It reached the moment. Lena's choked sob, the name. He said, Lena. And then the other voice, the guttural, wrong whisper underneath it. Lena, just like she remembered. A cold stone dropped into her stomach. But the recording didn't end there. The line didn't go dead. The static didn't swallow it. Instead, there was a beat of digital silence, a blank space on the tape, and then a new whisper. It was the same unnatural, distorted quality as the first one, gravel and broken glass. But the words were different. They were clear, horrifyingly clear. It whispered, Kara, her name. Then, after another fractional pause, it whispered her address, 1427 Oakwood Lane. The recording ended. The line went to true, empty dead air. Kara didn't move. The overhead light in her kitchen seemed to dim, as if the bulbs were straining. The familiar shapes of her refrigerator, her table, her coffee maker, they all looked like props. Staged. Because someone or something had just slipped past the stage and seen her. The violation was absolute. It was a surgical strike. It had taken the foundational horror of her professional life and wired it directly into her personal sanctuary. That whisper hadn't just said her name. It had pointed a finger through the phone, through the night, and laid it on the front door of her house. Procedure was all she had left. The boxes. She looked at the phone in her hand, the screen now dark. She took a breath that shuddered in her chest. And she did the only thing she could think to do. She called her old supervisor, Ben. He was a night owl. He'd answer. He did. On the third ring, voice rough with sleep. Kara, everything okay? She told him. Her voice was flat, a dispatcher reporting an incident. She gave him the time, the blocked number. She described the recording in precise detail. She did not, could not, describe the feeling in her kitchen. The feeling that the walls of 1427 Oakwood Lane were now as thin as paper. Ben was silent for a long time. Then he said the words that she already knew, deep down, were coming. Okay, he said, his own professional mask sliding into place. That's a harassment call. A serious one. I'll log it. We'll trace what we can from your cell provider in the morning. You should call the local PD too. File a report. She thanked him. She hung up. She stood in her bright, quiet kitchen. She had followed the procedure. She had filled in the boxes, harassing communication, threat, personal information disclosed. But as she finally moved, walking to her front door to check the deadbolt, she understood the new, terrible math. The first call had been a mystery. An empty room. This call was a message, and it had been delivered directly to her. The empty room, it seemed, had been paying attention, and it knew exactly where she lived. The investigation into the call began with a grim procedural energy. Ben was true to his word. He pulled the call logs from her cell provider and filed the reports. Kara went to her local police. She sat in an interview room and recited the facts. She gave them the time, the block number, and the message. She told them about the first call 5 years prior and the empty apartment. The officer nodded. He understood. A former dispatcher, a clear threat. This was taken seriously. And this is where the logic broke. The cell provider's trace came back first. They could see the call had connected. It lasted 47 seconds, but it had no point of origin. No cell tower had handled it. No switching station had logged it. According to the technician, it was a ghost in the machine. A packet of sound that appeared on Kara's phone without ever traveling through the network. The local police dug deeper. They subpoenaed records. They found nothing. No VoIP account, no spoof number. It was a technological impossibility. A call cannot exist without a source. It's like a bullet without a gun. Then came the final piece. The police cross-referenced the content of the call with their databases. The address it whispered was Kara's. The name it whispered was Lena, and the place it all started was Riverbend Apartments. A detective pulled the file. He found the demolition permits. The Riverbend Apartments had been torn down in the summer of 2018. 2 years before the call. The lot was vacant. They sent a car to that lot just to be complete. There was nothing there. No payphone, no hidden transmitter, just wind and trash. The detective called Kara. His voice was professional, but underneath was a faint puzzlement. He said the words they had to say. The case is being classified as telephone harassment. We'll keep it open, but there's no actionable lead. The origin point appears to be an empty lot. He advised her to change her number, to be vigilant. He was trying to be helpful, but Kara heard what he wasn't saying. They had hit a wall made of pure nonsense. The call had come from a place that did not exist. The law had no box for that. So they closed the box. They labeled it telephone harassment, and Kara was left alone in her house. That's when the unraveling began. It was quiet and meticulous and total. She took a leave of absence from dispatch. The headset now felt like a conduit. At home, her sanctuary became a prison of potential sound. The settling of timbers became footsteps. The gurgle of plumbing became a whisper. She would sit perfectly still, listening, trying to distinguish between the normal and the other. She checked the locks 5-6 times a night. She pressed her ear to the front door. She bought cameras. Their little red lights stared back, capturing nothing but her own pale face as she paced. Sleep became a memory. She'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, her body rigid, waiting. Because the call had come at night. The terror was a nocturnal creature, and it knew where she lived. The worst part was the silence on her own phone, the way it would sit there, dark and inert. She knew it wasn't just a phone anymore. It was a door. A door that something had opened from the other side, and a door once opened can be opened again. That was the core of the terror. It wasn't that something might try to get in through the windows. It was that something had already gotten in through a frequency. It had spoken her coordinates into the dark. How do you lock a door made of silence and memory? So she made the only decision that felt like a move in a game her opponent had already won. She decided to leave. It wasn't brave. It wasn't a fresh start. It was a tactical retreat. An evacuation. If the whisper knew her address, then her address was compromised. She would surrender the territory. She packed with a frantic efficiency. She didn't tell many people where she was going. Just a new town, a new apartment. The last night in the house, she didn't sleep at all. She sat on the floor of the empty living room and watched her phone. It never rang. The silence was complete. But as dawn touched the windows, she understood something. She wasn't just leaving a house. She was leaving a piece of the world that had proven itself thin and false and full of holes. She was running from an empty room. And the terrible truth was that an empty room can follow you. Because it's not a place. It's a condition. She left the house on Oakwood Lane. She moved to a new town, a new state even. She got a new number. She did everything you're supposed to do, and it didn't matter. You need to understand the kind of scar this leaves. It's not a memory that fades, it's a structural change, like a bone that heals wrong. Kara had been a person built on procedure, on the solid logic of cause and effect. That person was gone. In her new apartment, with its unfamiliar walls, the anxiety didn't leave. It just refined itself. It became quieter, more patient. She'd be making dinner, and her new phone, sitting on the counter, would ring. A normal ring. Her body would lock solid, her breath would stop. She'd stare at the screen, waiting for it to say blocked. It never did. It was always a telemarketer or her doctor's office confirming an appointment. But for that 1 second, between the first ring and the second, she was back in her old kitchen, under that too bright light, listening to a ghost tape. The silence was worse, though. The silence on the line when she answered a call from a friend. That half-beat of dead air before they said hello. That's where it lived now, in the gaps, in the spaces between sounds. She'd find herself holding the phone, listening to the hollow quiet of an open line. She'd feel a pressure, a terrible attention, as if something was in that silence with her, listening back. She resigned from dispatch 6 months after the call to her house. She cited anxiety. They understood. They'd seen it before, though never quite like this. Her supervisor, Ben, signed the paperwork. He never mentioned the trace results again. The official file was closed. Telephone harassment. Inactive. I've seen that file. It's a thin thing, just a few pages. Report 1544-562 for the empty apartment. A supplemental memo about the 2020 call. The technician's note about the point of origin. They're just pieces of paper. They don't explain anything. They just state the impossible in very calm, very precise language. The apartment was empty. The call came from nowhere. The woman named Lena was never found because, according to every physical law, she was never there. And this is the thought that began to eat at Kara in her new, quiet life. The thought that wouldn't fit in any box. What if it was never about Lena at all? What if Lena was just practice? Think about it. A test of the system. A terrified voice calls from a locked room. The system responds. Police are sent. They find nothing. The call is logged, filed, forgotten by everyone except the one person on the other end of the headset. The dispatcher. The one whose voice is on the tape. The one who heard the whisper underneath the whisper. 5 years of silence. Then the system is engaged again. This time, the recording is played back, but it's been modified, upgraded. It doesn't just repeat the test subject's name, it learns a new one. It finds a new target. It speaks the dispatcher's name. It gives her address. A direct personal vector. It learned. From the first call to the second, it learned how to be more specific, how to reach deeper. Kara started to see the 911 network not as a tool, but as a landscape, a vast, dark country of wires and frequencies and silent lines. And in that country, something was moving. Something that understood how the roads worked, something that could make a call from a place that wasn't there. The official story is a dead end. An unfounded incident and an unresolved harassment case. Two mysteries that cancel each other out. But the unofficial story, the one Kara lives with every day, is far simpler and far worse. Something used the phone. It called from an empty room to an empty lot. And in between, it found a human being. It mapped her. It named her. It chased her from her home. And the most unsettling part, it worked. She is still waiting. Not for an answer. She's given up on those. She's waiting for the next stage. Because if it learned once, it can learn again. The third call. What would it say? What would it know by then? Her number is changed. Her address is new. But she knows, in that deep, quiet place where she knows the taste of real fear, that those are just numbers. They're just words. And whatever whispered her name into the phone that night, it understands words. It understands how to find the meaning inside them. So she listens to the silence, to the hum of her new refrigerator, to the empty space on the line before a friend says hello. She is listening for the click of a connection being made from a place that shouldn't exist. She is listening for the breath, shaky and shallow. That isn't hers. She is waiting for the whisper that has learned her new name. The case is inactive. The file is closed. But the line is still open. The tape has reached its end. I hope the stories tonight brought a pleasant chill to your spine as you drifted further into the dark. Thank you for braving the shadows here at the Sleep Paralysis tapes. If you are still awake, lying still in the quiet, remember to contact me with your own unsettling encounters so they can be added to our growing archive. As my voice fades away, let the silence of your room wrap around you completely. May your sleep be undisturbed, your doors remain locked, and your morning arrive safely. Until we open the tapes again, good night.